Al Gore made a film a decade ago, An Inconvenient Truth, which told one false claim after another to hype the global warming scare. In fact, a British court ruled that it contained 9 key scientific errors and could not be shown to students without guidance notes about those errors. Yet, Melbourne University last week still gave Gore an honorary doctorate to reward him for scaring us about what it called the challenges of climate change. Joining me is Rowan Dean, editor of The Spectator Australia, columnist for the Courier Mail and co-host of the most excellent program called Outsiders on Sky every Sunday at 10 a.m. Never miss it. Rowan,
Fantastic.
Thanks for your time.
Thank you, Andrew.
Should an Australian university be giving an honorary doctorate to a man whose scholarship is so bad? I mean, this is a bloke who wrongly predicted the Arctic ice cap could have melted away already, who wrongly claimed polar bears are being wiped out, who wrongly claimed climate-related extreme weather events were becoming much more common and destructive. I mean, how can a university give a degree for that?
Well, Andrew, unfortunately, this just shows what our universities in Australia have come to, where political correctness and politics overrules any kind of rational scientific approach to things. Here they're giving a doctorate to a guy for a movie, which was, as you say, a British judge found 9 examples within it where it was clearly factually incorrect. But let's not forget that the original film was a decade ago, and most of the predictions within the film were due to take place within the decade. So by his own timeline, Al Gore has managed to disprove most of his earlier inconvenient truths, because inconveniently for Al, most of them didn't come true. But what he's done is the classic trick, Andrew. He's now doubled down. He's gone, OK, I'm going to make another film, and I'm going to go even harder. And he's got a sequel out called An Inconvenient Sequel, and it's speaking with my old ad man's hat on, it is a giant ad for renewables, Andrew, where he's done the classic ad man's trick. If you don't know how to sell your product, the best way to sell it, by far the most effective way if you've got a product to sell, is to scare the bejesus out of everyone so that they have to buy that product because you're offering it as the only solution. And if you look at the new film, Andrew, he's basically gone, it's all drama, and he's heightened the hyperbole on the terror and the horror of climate change, using every bit of filmmakers' trickery to show how terrible the future will be, using examples from the present, none of which can be categorically defined as being anything to do with climate change, such as Hurricane Katrina. We know there are fewer hurricanes, not more hurricanes, so pointing to Hurricane Katrina as an example of climate change makes no sense at all, statistically. But he's got all these terror objects, and he's then, to even heighten, Andrew, the terror, he's actually shown people, like a Chinese boy who's terrified and in tears and weeping. So in fact, if you're not actually terrified by the footage, he's gone, here's someone who is terrified, look at these people, and they're all worried. And of course they're worried and terrified because they're in the middle of dreadful climatic scenarios.
It's funny, I once managed to be at a conference where I got the final question and asked him one that made him pop his valves. But it's interesting with him. There's a Southern Baptist preacher about him, and that scene of him consoling that poor sobbing Chinese bloke, it really was like, here is Christ laying hands on the afflicted. It is just
exactly,
so
and it's every bit as fake as when Steve Martin did a film pretending to be one of these Southern Baptist preachers and laying on of hands and all, every bit is... But Andrew, about 10 years ago, I was actually at the Cannes Advertising Festival, and Al Gore was the guest speaker there. He learned an awful lot from the ad men, I'd say, over the times he's been hanging out with them, because the new film is basically an ad for renewables, and all the way through, pretty beautiful shots. So all the horror shots and the Chinese kid all upset and horrors, then you go to the balm, soothing music.
Raises the question,
and here it is.
Raises the question, has he declared all his interest in the renewable energy space?
Of course he hasn't.
Because I think he's what has been called the world's first carbon billionaire.
Yeah.
But listen, you know, here he is getting these rewards for hype, exaggeration and incorrect predictions. Should we say falsehoods? So I won't get sued, will I? I just wonder,
unprovable.
on the
Everything
other
with
hand,
him is unprovable. So this is the joke, you know.
But now, on the other hand, you get Liberal MP Craig Kelly telling the truth here on Sky, on your show when you were filling in. He was telling the truth last week that policies that made our electricity about the most expensive in the world would kill poor people because they can't afford heating in winter. Here he is. I want you to watch. Here he is, followed by the mockers in his own party and in the media. Have a listen.
People will die this winter because of the policies that we have to subsidise renewable energy.
You guys are essentially killing people because of the renewable energy target. Your thoughts on that?
Look, he's killing me with his humour, frankly. Look, I've had to take Craig aside on a number of occasions and counsel him.
He
There
said
is a
renewable
problem.
energy is what's killing
I know.
people.
That was the dopey bit, right?
That's the central bit.
Rowan, doesn't it make you sick when people laugh and mock the truth, and not because they follow the facts? You know, those people weren't following the facts. It's they're following the fashion. It's a kind of bullying, like, ha, you're the only one that doesn't think like we do, even though they're wrong. It's an invincible ignorance that drives me nuts.
Exactly. And what's really depressing about this, we were just talking about Al Gore, who whips up this frenzy of fear about millions of people dying and plagues and pestilence and all the rest. If you look at Australia now, the most number of deaths occur during the winter, July and August. And if you also look at the number of deaths over the last 10 years, the trend is actually virtually follows pretty similarly the rise in electricity bills. And this isn't surprising. This isn't some shock, horror, weird thing. Basically what Craig Kelly is saying, which is common sense, is that if energy gets more expensive, energy poverty will increase. People don't have unlimited finances, so those people who have fewer dollars will find that they are colder. That's not some scare thing. That's just logic. And we also know from endless number of studies that particularly the elderly, but also young, also poorer families, if they keep their house below 18 degrees throughout the winter, they are more likely to suffer illnesses, and some of those illnesses will lead to death. The immune system is compromised, breathing, asthma, it goes on and on. So there's nothing actually dramatic about what Craig Kelly was saying. He's just stating the truth. And any political party that willingly pushes up the cost of energy must accept that that is the price. And to tell that is not scaremongering. That's just stating the simple fact.
Mate,
but they're laughing at this.
As you've seen, surveys in Britain which say that tens of thousands of people there have died from cold homes, and there's an energy poverty kind of. They can't afford the damn heating.
Precisely.
Now, why this is a laughing matter to the likes of Sarah Henderson, I don't know. Let's laugh at people dying.
Well,
that's most amusing.
It's terrific, yeah.
Look, it just really drives me nuts. Like I say,
can I just
ignorance.
say one other little thing, Andrew, which was really, really depressing, is that generation of people, the elderly, who are probably less likely to have the money to pay those extra heating bills, they're the same stoic generation who would go, OK, we can't afford the electricity bill, we're not going to complain, we'll put on more jumpers, we'll sit there and their dignity will not allow them to complain. Unlike the younger generation who'll be going, gimme, 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 making a noise, the older generation will suffer and people will die. That's the unfortunate truth.
Well, I'm hoping that the Energy Minister, Josh Frydenberg, will say something about this soon, because I think it's time that he weighed in and told the truth on this one, and I think he's capable of doing that. Listen, just before we go, I saw on